Hi, Adrian. Thanks for joining us. If we could start with an introduction and telling us your role at Atlassian.
I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Atlassian, CISO. So that makes me responsible for making sure that we've built in all the security that we need, both to our corporate environment, but also to all of our products.
And we continue to hear how important security is to customers who are considering migrating. Can you tell us about cloud security in general and some of the investments we've made in that area in the past year?
Absolutely. I keep hearing security is important too, although I think that might be because I have security in my title and that's all people want to talk to me about. Nonetheless, I think it is one of the things that we hear most frequently from customers and get pulled into a lot of conversations about it. We've been ramping up investment in security really for as long as Atlassian has been around, so certainly for the last 10 years. As we've seen our customers begin to migrate to the cloud and take advantage of our cloud services, we've realized that we need to have a cloud that is as secure as the most secure of our customers. We really want customers to think about adopting our cloud products as a way for them to improve their security. And so we've been investing in people, we've been investing in practices, a lot of technology as well, to try to make sure that we're got the best security that we possibly can in our cloud products.
And what's on the roadmap for cloud security in the upcoming year?
This is always a fun question. We've certainly made some improvements around cryptography, and that's an area that we're making investments and continuing to make investments. Some of those are visible. A lot of them are invisible, making sure that the way that we protect keys internally are more and more protected. A lot of improvements going on in the core infrastructure to make sure that if there were any kind of security issue to arise, that it's as constrained as it possibly can be within our architecture and narrowly focused. Because the reality is that security incidents happen. Could be by bugs, could be by attackers. And so we do a lot to make sure that we've got isolation baked into our infrastructure to help minimize the potential impact of those types of issues.
Great. And can you speak a little to how platform-level security on cloud compares to common security practices on server?
So the cloud is really interesting from a security and architecture standpoint. Most people take a sort of relatively simplistic view of what does cloud mean, right? It means the ability to scale up, the ability to change the size of your infrastructure very, very quickly. The other element of the cloud architecture is it allows us to break down what is otherwise a monolithic application into lots of small pieces. A lot of the work that we've been doing on cloud over the last decade has been what we call decomposing that monolith into microservices. And from a security standpoint, that's an incredible boon because what it means is each of those microservices can validate how it's interacting with the other microservices, right? So you can apply security in lots of places inside the core architecture. And that's one of the key security improvements that is only possible once you've horizontally scaled out your architecture, decompose it into these microservices. And the only place that it's sane to do that is when you're at cloud scale. And so that's where we think long-term, and what we've seen with other cloud service providers as well, is that long-term, the way you get the best security is by using the cloud and taking advantage of those sort of infrastructure primitives that you really don't have in a single instance of server or data center running on a single server. You can't decompose it that way and imply those security boundaries.
Atlassian Access is a product we've built to provide enhanced security and centralized administration. Let's take a closer look.
Every company has hurdles to jump over when it comes to scaling and securing their cloud tools. As your organization becomes more complex, managing users becomes increasingly tedious, and securing your data is more important than ever. Atlassian Access is your centralized command center for company-wide security and control of your favorite Atlassian tools, so you can scale with confidence and greater efficiency. Gain full visibility across siloed teams and sites with organizations. Claim your company domains and quickly begin managing all your Atlassian cloud users, regardless of site. And if you already have an identity provider, you can set up one-click access to your apps via SAML SSO to increase security and convenience for all of your users. Connect your Atlassian products to your external user directory and keep access to these products automatically in sync whenever someone is added or removed. Don't have an identity provider? Stay a step ahead and enforce a second layer of security with two-step verification, or safeguard accounts with other configurable password policies. Keep your systems running smoothly with our highly trained support teams and quick response times. Get central governance and advanced security across your Atlassian suite with Access.
And Adrian, can you tell us more about some of the feedback you're hearing from customers about Atlassian Access?
The management that Access provides is critical to, especially for larger customers, where they need to have consistent enforcement of security policies across their organization, across the different applications that they have. For smaller companies, that can be done in a more ad hoc way, but even there, Access turns out to be really valuable for folks that are sophisticated enough to be able to take advantage of its capabilities.
Great. And what is Atlassian's own stance on adopting SaaS tools to de-risk the business from a security perspective?
We're not unique, but happy to talk a little bit about it. In specific areas, companies have been very aggressive about adopting cloud. Our infrastructure is all cloud, right? We don't host our own applications basically anywhere anymore. We're running entirely on a cloud at an infrastructure level. For a lot of the major applications, email, your payroll, your financial management, most companies at this point are using some kind of SaaS provider for those infrastructure because they need to in order to connect into the service providers that are fundamental, right? Your bank provides hooks for those SaaS applications in order to be able to do payroll. And so it just makes sense to do that. Nobody thinks that they can run a more secure email instance than Google or Microsoft at this point. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe you could, but realistically you can't anymore. Right? You need it to be connected to the internet. You need to be connected to everybody else that you're sending email to and from, and so you take advantage of it. Messaging is the same way. We're an investor in Slack, but we also are a user of Slack. And so it goes on and on. At this point, there are very few applications that we deploy that are not SaaS. And the expectation is you benefit from isolating each of those services from one another and no longer have sort of a very significant amount of customer and company data in a single place within a single data center.
Great. And can you share more about the security architecture that Atlassian leverages to protect from internal and external threats?
I mentioned already that we're running almost entirely, in fact, I think high 99% on Amazon is our cloud provider. Within that environment, we have done sort of the classic segmentation of our network into production environment and test environment and corporate environment, and there's isolation between those environments. Transitioning between those environments requires specific authorization, and only a small set of people are able to do it, and they have requirements related to it. One of the key things that we've done in terms of employees is we've deployed zero trust networking. So depending on what service an employee is trying to access, the device that they're allowed to access that from is going to go through different levels of integrity check. And they might be able to access something from their BYOD device that's very different from what they'd be able to access from their corporate issued laptop, which is what everybody's working off of these days since we're all work from home. So we monitor those environments and react to issues that are found both in the actual production environment, the test environment, in the corporate environment, but also on laptops and things like that. At the application level, isolation continues. We have what we call a platform as a service that was built on top of Amazon using containers in some instances, but in some instances, raw EC2 instances, and isolation between the microservices that are running in those environments. So again, decomposing it and then applying both encryption and authentication between those microservices in order to limit the scope of any potential compromise of a component within the overall architecture. So that's the sort of structural elements that have been put in place. And our goal, of course, is to have very clear definition of who's accessing a service, from where they're accessing it and over what protocol they're accessing it, and making sure that it is consistent with industry best practice in all of those interactions.
Thanks. And this is the Passport to Cloud Migrations video series, and no conversation about migrations is complete without talking about apps. So can you speak to some of the security controls and security practices we have for our third-party app vendors?
Very interesting area, actually. I'm really passionate about it. Atlassian's been successful in part, and our customers have been successful in part because we have such a strong ecosystem of building applications. The model for the cloud is different. There's no question about that, right? If what you're doing is deploying an application, whether it's Atlassian application or an application from within our ecosystem into an environment that our software is running, and you're doing that into your own data center, it feels like you've got control over that whole environment, right? And in many ways you do. If what you're doing is using a cloud-based application and it's connected to both Atlassian and third parties, then there's data that's sort of outside of your data center. So we get a lot of questions about this. Over the last several years, we have defined a set of security requirements in terms of how data can be accessed and what those interactions can look like. We've published them. You are more than welcome to take a look at them. We have them, I believe, on the Trust Center, but we certainly have them in documentation that we provide to all the ecosystem vendors as well. So there are minimum requirements around encryption and authentication and how data can be used in the context of those applications. Much of that, we do some validation both by looking at the applications ourselves, and then we also encourage participation in bug bounties. One of the ways that we encourage that is that there's a badge that applications can earn by having enhanced set of security requirements, including running a bug bounty. And if they have that badge, then you know that they're getting that sort of elevated level of security in the context of the marketplace.
Great. And you mentioned the Trust Center. Can you speak a little more to the Atlassian Trust Center and how customers should be using it?
So philosophically, I'm a believer that if you have good security, you should be able to describe everything that you're doing. And people should be able to look at that and they should be able to say, that's great. Or, wait a minute, this right here needs to be fixed. And so we are making a commitment and have been in the process of documenting everything that we're doing and then making it available. And if there's anything that's missing, we'd love to hear about it and make that additional information available. Eventually, I think probably over the next couple of years, we want to get to the point where everything that we're doing, everything that we're thinking about, and how we're approaching security is well documented and anybody can download it and take a look.
Great. And what would you say to customers who consider security a blocker to migrating to cloud?
I mean, anything can be a blocker. Absolutely, I think security is definitely one of the things that you should take very seriously. And if there isn't what you're looking for, then by all means, let us know. My expectation is that over time, Atlassian is going to continue to increase our investment, and that investment, because of the structure of cloud, is going to scale non-linearly, and that cloud is just going to be more and more secure. When I talk to other CISOs out there in the industry, they're already basically saying that most cloud providers are more secure than most banks, right? Because they have to be. Because their banks are customers. And so you sort of aggregate the highest level of security across all the banks for every one of their products, and that's what you have to have in the cloud in order to be successful in this space. Do I think that we are at that sort of ultimate place at this point? Probably not. Do I think that there are customers for whom we've already vastly exceeded their level of security? Absolutely. Do I hope that those customers take a look at cloud and say, one way I could improve my security is to move to cloud? Absolutely. If you're a customer that looks at our cloud and says, nope, this is not currently better than what we're doing, and we shouldn't make the move, then let us know what it is that the gaps are, so that we can move in the direction of basically solving those gaps and get to the point where cloud satisfies you.
Great. And we'll close with this. What advice or guidance would you give to customers who are considering migrating to Atlassian's cloud products?
I think I kind of touched on that in the last question, which is look very carefully at your own posture right now. and ask, over the next 6 months, will this make me more secure? Over the next year, will this make me more secure? Over the next 2 years, how do I think it's going to evolve, and will it make me more secure? And if the answer to that is yes, then think about what your migration path should look like. It's our goal to get it to be the case for all of those. We certainly think in a longer horizon, it's probably true for most people already.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome.